You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 46, Speaking German with the Fluent Show. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast and conversation with multilinguals. This week, I'm joined by Kerstin Cable of the Fluent Show, and I must say I can barely believe it. I've been such a huge fan of the Fluent Show for a very long time. So what does one talk about with another language podcaster who's seen it all? We talked about her language journey through loads of different languages, including her love of the Welsh language and culture. Kerstin tells me about her native German as well, and we have some fun pronouncing some German words. And because Kerstin is from a winemaking family, I also had a chance to learn about German wine and wine culture in Germany. So much fun, and we laugh a lot in this episode. But before you get into it, I just want to announce that Women in Language is coming up this weekend from March 4th to March 7th, and yours truly will be presenting during the event. How fab is that? Women in Language is an incredible event bringing together a diverse group of women, sharing what we know and what we've learned about languages. I'm honored to be able to participate this year. To learn more about the event, Kerstin fills us in during the episode, but you can also click the link in the show notes to get your ticket. And FYI, it's open to everyone to attend, not just women. Thank you to Kerstin for taking the time to talk with me in this episode and for continuing to champion women's voices in the language learning community. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. Okay, let's chat. So welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. And I started this show a year ago, and I literally never thought that I would be sitting here saying these words, but I am absolutely delighted to have as my guest today, Kerstin Cable of the Fluent Show. How are you, Kerstin?
Hi, I'm great. I'm great. So happy to be here, as people say when they go to podcasts.
Yeah.
But I genuinely am. I'm excited.
I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm just so thrilled that I'm actually sitting down talking with you for an episode. It's a little surreal for me, because I definitely am a big fan of your show, and your show is such an inspiration for me. When I was starting,
thank you.
As I'm starting out, and I'm beside myself. I'm a fangirl right now. I'm so excited. So,
okay, this has never happened to me, so thank you.
I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
My first language is German, and I understand Luxembourgish because I grew up with a really strong dialect of German spoken in my household as well. That my grandma spoke. It's called Moselfränkisch, and it's really close to Luxembourgish because I'm from 100 miles away from the Luxembourgish border, sort of kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Apart from that, I just spoke German, and which doesn't mean there wasn't language in my general world. I think I always was curious about it. My family, we're winemakers. We had Polish seasonal workers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you would hear that. And then in school, we sort of started, doing a little bit of, let's sing this song, it's in French. Let's sing this song, it's in English. And the radio was in English. And my mom, I used to listen to my mom's records and tapes a lot when I was little, when I was really little.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I started to learn English, which is when I was 10 in school, I was so eager to learn English. I was so ready for it that it felt like a long time coming, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So English is kind of my second like official. I don't know. It's the language. It's my first language I learned in a formal environment, and then in that same school, I was really lucky because I was in the same school for about 8 years, and we did compulsory French, and then I did some optional Italian.
Mm.
Later, I studied Latin for 3 years, and
Wow.
then I went to train as what's called a like multilingual secretary, European secretary,
Hmm.
and that was really heavy on the French and English. And so, like, you have to be completely functional and also translate and also summarize newspaper articles and just full functionality, and also conversational Spanish. And that's kind of my life until I was 20. Then I moved to the UK, had a bit of a break. But in the last maybe 10 years, I've started language learning, kind of picked it up again. This is a long story because I
Yeah.
just realized I am really old.
Let's
No, but
stop
I'm
it.
not 20. And yes, so then I think I started with Russian, played around with that for a bit. At some point, dropped Russian for Welsh. Welsh is the best language. I love it. I love it. I've been learning Welsh for 5.5 years. I'm now conversational. I can really chat in Welsh.
Oh, wow.
B2, my book says. And then last year I was learning Chinese for a little bit. So now I kind of bounce around a little bit more, but Welsh is a steady one for me.
Oh, wow. Where do you think, or do you think that, I guess, growing up so close to another country and having this additional dialect in your home that's so close to what's spoken in another country, do you think that kind of spurred you to want to learn so many different languages, or was that a seed that was planted in your head like from very young?
I'm I'm not sure that it drove me to learn lots of different languages. To be honest, for me, it's never really been about the number. I never feel like I want to do more languages, as in like add some. It's more that, a new one comes along and you go, oh, that looks good. That's interesting. Ooh. And then before you know it, you were going to dabble for 2 months and it's been a year.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it did make a difference. And it's not unusual. Where I come from, it's not unusual to grow up near a different country. Germany
Right.
borders on what, 8 countries or something like that. And most of them do have a different official language. Even in Austria, like Italy is spoken in border regions, Hungarian might kind of drift across. Germany hasn't always been this shape of Germany and all that kind of thing. So it always felt like languages, I guess, were just a part of life.
Yeah.
And if you grow up with not English, I'm sure you'll have heard this from other guests. If you grow up with not English, then you kind of know, like you learn English.
Hmm.
It's almost it's like learning maths or
Really.
math for the Americans.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't have the S on the math. I don't know.
No, you're weird.
I asked that question because, and I think about this a lot, like, growing up here in the US, and
Mm,
I grew up in New York City, so, it's very multicultural. There's 800 languages spoken here. There's a lot. But for me, like, I didn't have that exposure to, I didn't have proximity to other languages when I was growing up because of, it when you're in like the touristy part of New York City or the more commercial areas, like you hear more languages. But when you live here, you're not living in like the middle of Manhattan. Like you're living, like I grew up out in the Bronx, and people grow up in different boroughs of New York. So as with every neighborhood in any place in the world, like you're only surrounded by certain people. So you don't get exposed to everything. But for me, and I guess because I've been examining this for a while in myself, like
mm,
where has this desire to become multilingual, where did it come from? What sparked it for me? And I think that I haven't really settled on a conclusion because I think it comes from a few different places. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm always curious to know like how other people got their spark and what drives them, what keeps them going and wanting to learn, wanting to dabble in Welsh for 6 weeks and then it turns into 4 years, like where does that come from? And I think it's interesting. Like you're right, in Germany and Europe in general, like you have so much proximity to completely different languages. So
You know what I think is in there for me is, I think what I sometimes notice with especially native English speakers is there is this hesitation to believe that you can even learn another language, if that
mhm.
makes sense. I don't have a big desire. I've never felt a big desire to become a person who speaks lots of languages or become multilingual or something like that. Partly because I didn't feel like it would say anything about me.
Mm. I understand what you're saying, and I guess I can think about it in like my own terms. Like for me as an American, if I go on to learn four languages, it's like a feat. It's an
Yeah.
accomplishment. Whereas for someone who grew up around different languages, maybe in Europe or in Asia and Africa,
Like
it's
most of Belgium is bilingual, you know?
right, right. So it's just a Tuesday, there's nothing like greatly extraordinary about that accomplishment, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's something about, oh, I'm just interested in this. I'm going to do this for a little bit. And then I'm kind of bumbling on a little bit further. It's so much easier. This is funny because now I'm saying it, I'm realizing that this is even true for me in business and in
Mm.
any venture, business, fitness, whatever it is. If you're just doing it for fun and you've no attachment to the outcome of it, then you do better.
Oh yeah.
But then when you start doing well, then you start having attachment to the outcome of it.
You're
And then it goes away. And then you start worrying that you're not going to do well anymore.
yes. You're
It's
t-
mad. It's human madness.
yeah, it's it's like you said with fitness, if you're trying to lose weight, you gain 3 pounds. If you don't try to lose weight, you lose 10 pounds. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just, the universe doesn't give you exactly what you want.
Yeah. So I guess I didn't feel like, even when I was then picking up Italian, then when I was doing Latin, I just chose school subjects that I thought that sounded more like it sounded more fun than chemistry.
Oh yeah.
I got rid of physics the second I could because that's not my thing. So I was more like, it's not like I was trying to become a person who speaks four languages at the age of 18 or something like that. I
Mhm.
was just picking the school subjects that are fun.
Yeah. So when you were in school and you had this opportunity to pick the languages, how did you do in school? Like what was that experience like when you were going through these different languages and you know figuring out what you wanted to study?
Oh gosh, I think I did on the good side of mediocre or the mediocre side of good, however you want to see it.
Mm,
Probably generally in school. I excelled in English. Always, always, always A plus student in English. That was the one I cared about. That was the one where I worked hard, but that was the one that, because I worked hard and I just was so obsessed with it, I was really good at it. So
mhm,
English was kind of my main thing. Mind you, I am from a very small rural village, so I wasn't like a worldly person who understood anything about England or America, but I did a lot of dreaming and I did a lot of pop music listening.
mm,
And the internet wasn't really a thing when, in those days. So, it's not so, but it really, you couldn't just go online, watch a lot of YouTube and learn something about these places.
yeah.
So, you, yeah, in French, oh, I don't know. I never really loved French. I didn't really love the teachers I had. It was all like Camus and absurdist drama and all this
Oh
stuff. And I don't
God.
know, it was so up its own. I just didn't like it. It wasn't my thing. I found it not easy. Like, linguistically, I didn't struggle, but I just had very little cultural interest in. Like, I wasn't picking up what they were putting down at all.
Right.
So I think I actually got like a D minus in my final exam. No, hang on, that's not true. A D plus, so something like that. Like, it wasn't a good grade
Oh,
at
wow.
all. But when I went to do the secretary training, all our teachers were these like lively, funny French women.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked much more about contemporary topics and news articles and that kind of stuff. And they were pushing us in a different way and having just all these conversations and making jokes and divorce. And of course, it's masculine because it's a masculine word. It's divorce. All the bad things are masculine. Ha I just remember I felt like for the first time, I took French for what? 5 years
Mm-hmm.
in school or in whatever, like, yeah, school, high
Yeah.
school, and in gymnasium. And then I went to secretary training and I felt like that was the first time I laughed in French. And then I got better because it was fun. It was much funnier. But
Yeah.
before that, it was like, well, I guess like the choice that they give you at age 13 in my school, or gave us, was, do you want to do French or Latin? And I was like, let me think.
Mm.
And then in Italian again, I did really well because it was just it wasn't like it was an elective. It was like, hey, do you want to hang around in the afternoon and do Italian? I was like, yeah, okay. So it was different.
Mm-hmm.
I think French was probably the one I struggled with most until I found something that I enjoyed about it.
Mm. I love that you're saying that, and I think one thing that I really enjoy about doing this show is how many people have been just saying school was terrible, or I had a terrible time in school with this subject. And it wasn't until I figured out how to relate to it through my
Mm,
favorite sport, or, movies, or music, or, different things. And
yeah.
I just, like you, I started studying languages before there was the internet. Like, I couldn't go on YouTube. I couldn't even, my options were like Berlitz, or uh like the
Yeah, like
tapes.
Rosetta or something.
Yeah, I don't even think Rosetta Stone was really popular
What?
here, but I remember, or Rosetta Stone was like $1,000. Remember, it was like super expensive, and I could go to the bookstore and get like the big, let's learn French, like cassettes that came with the booklet. And like,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have all of these resources. So, there was no
Yeah.
one really telling us that uh you don't have to, keep your head in a book and pass a test just to learn a language.
I would have
So,
never, at the age of 18 or something like that, I would have never ever self-studied a language.
yeah.
No, no, like, I mean, I was being well served by school. And I was always doing lots of languages in my full-time education, but it wouldn't occur to me to do like another one as a hobby. No way. I mean, I
Yeah.
do it now. but no, that's not, I've not always been that person.
Mhm.
That's for other people.
Yeah.
More
So,
impressive people than me, for sure.
how have your methods for studying languages, how have they adapted over time? I mean, I guess we talked a little bit about this, but was there any point that you got to where you said, "You know what? This specific thing is not working for me. I'm going to do something
Mm.
else." And like that other thing, like did you ever have a point where you were really assessing like how to get your your style that works for you?
That's an interesting question because I basically I did that secretary thing and then I went to England to university and then I did French in my degree and then I was so from the ages of like 10 to 21 or something like that I was always learning a language in a formal environment.
Mm,
So I never really thought about self-studying how or whether that would be possible. It just didn't occur to me. And then for a while, I just kind of didn't until the interest came back. And that was sort of maybe I had like 5, 6 years where I was still, I think I was repeating, like there was this thing where you could repeat the university module. That was like French 301 or whatever. So I was doing that again. I was like repeating third year French, still taking formal classes
Mm-hmm.
off of my own. So okay, I guess that's kind of a transition. It was like me choosing to do it, but still getting all of my instruction externally. And then the transition, then at some point, it came to me choosing to do it, but not taking as much external instruction. And for me, that's not really been because external instruction doesn't work for me, or it's too slow or too fast. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really gregarious. I like other people. I enjoy working with other people, and in a language class, it's nice. You get to hang out with. It's fun. So it was. I always took the classes when I could. For that, it changed from being about the language, but also to become a social thing.
Oh, okay.
And I guess the social, and then I started doing this job, and this job for me started as so now I'm, I guess, a language coach.
Mm.
Now I have a job that no one can describe anymore. Great. But essentially, I help people learn languages, but all languages. So I talk about study skills and mindset. And that is the focus, say, of the Fluent Show, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that evolved from being a German tutor. So when I first started out, I was like, oh, I can't do my, like, I was on a burnout. I was really struggling with my actual job, my full-time job. And it
Yeah.
was sort of, what can I even do? What skills do I have in my brain? Oh, I guess I have German. Let's,
Mm-hmm.
do that. And that then got me more and more interested in how people learn, more and more interested in how I can support people learning, helped me realize more and more that what I want to do is not really just tell people the best way to learn a German prefix.
Mm.
I mean, that's valuable and I could, but there was just this other thing where I just saw people standing in their own way so much.
Yeah.
And I'm just so interested in that. Like the amount of times we think the language or the linguistic part is the problem, but actually there's something in your head or in your life that's actually also tripping you up.
Mm-hmm.
And that really tickles me and gets me, and that's what I get excited about. So that's how I ended up here,
I
which
think
isn't now about my own language learning anymore. So sorry.
yeah, and no, that's great. And that's what I really love this about this show because I'm talking about languages, but I'm really sharing your story and
Mm,
talking also about, culture, which we'll get to a little bit later, and just like all things that people don't even really think of when it comes to learning a language. And I'm so glad that you said that about, people standing in their own way because this is my current state, I think, of just a year ago from today, I would have sat here and said, I can't learn this because I've tried for 20 years and I can't figure out the subjunctive case of blah, blah, blah. And it would have
yeah.
just been all about the grammar and how much I'm terrible and I can't say anything in the future or the past tense and I don't deserve this and blah, 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 blah. But
Yeah.
then over the course of the year, I really realized like my problem is not, you know, the cases. My problem is not declining a verb. My problem is that it's in my head. It's my own mental block that's keeping me from getting to where I want to be. And so, I've really been focusing on improving my confidence and just
Mm,
trying to feel confident, trying to feel ready to make mistakes and not be so self-conscious lying awake at night like, oh my God, I used the wrong tense or I spelled this word wrong and they're
you
gonna think I'm so
didn't.
stupid. Like I don't, I don't want to. um I still remember this one time. This was 6 years ago. And I was like, I was having a beer with someone in Paris. And instead of saying santé, I said salut. And this person corrected me. And that was in 2015. And I still remember that like all the
Mm.
time. And it's just like, I don't want to have those kind of moments anymore because it was such a small thing. And I'm sure if I went and I said to this person, like, do you remember that time I completely said the wrong word? Like, they wouldn't remember. So,
Yes. And the thing is as well, like if you just laugh that off, it doesn't actually matter that you make the mistake. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. It doesn't matter that you can't say anything in the future tense. I think for 2 years in Welsh, I just said something in the present tense and then said next week,
Yeah.
and just hoped for the best. It's if there's any kind of secret, like, I don't know, if I could bottle the attitude I have to how bad I actually am, that I would really happily share this with lots of people, because my attitude really is like, ultimately, if you come with a smile and you're somewhat comprehensible, you can achieve probably 80% of your goals without being that good at it, and it's going to make you want to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is a good segue, I think, to talking about fluent language and the Fluent Show. I would love to know everything, how you got started. I mean, I'm sure that everyone who listens to my show listens to your show, like, first and foremost.
Just in
But
case they don't,
just in case they
fluent.show
don't,
is the website.
yeah. Just in case they don't, I don't know why you're not listening to the Fluent Show. But please tell us, what are some of the aims and goals of fluent language? What are some of your methods? What are
Oh,
some of your clients motivate, if you can, talk about that?
yeah, yeah, of
And
course.
the Fluent Show, how did you get started with the show, and how has it become an extension of your coaching? And tell us everything.
Oh my. Oh, we haven't got time. We haven't got time. I guess if I had to describe what I do with fluent language without any judgment, it is like a multi-passionate business. I kind of work based on what I think is important, what I think is going to be fun, but the outlook is it's always like the prism I look through is always language and helping people learn languages.
Mm.
And the Fluent Show is one of the most focused expressions that I have of that. um, and it builds kind of into my business. So what I do essentially as a coach is I work with people who want to learn other languages, and usually I work with people who are stuck for some reason, and I'm quite good at getting people unstuck, and there's certain patterns that I see running people into, so I help with that. But I'm also quite experienced as a teacher, and I think I benefit from knowing a lot about self-study as somebody who has self-studied, but also has supported lots of people as a tutor. So I come at it from that side, and then being interested and having done this is my 8th year of having fluent language,
Yay.
having done a lot of researching and learning about how people learn. So I
Hmm.
kind of bring all of that together. I look at the research, I look at science. I am not prescriptive. I don't have one method that everybody needs to follow. However, I do help people set good goals, track their actions, kind of become more self-aware about how they are learning,
Hmm.
and kind of claim for themselves that they already have good answers to most of the questions that are in their head.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've got that. I do that. I guess. In terms of product wise, for example, my core course that I teach is called the Language Habit Toolkit, which is all about building structure for yourself and getting organized. But obviously also talks about core skills of language. So I bring together this kind of, not productivity, but getting organized and feeling, how to be motivated and how to make yourself play along with this thing that you want to do, learning a language.
Yeah.
Kind of like a personal trainer, I guess, if you wanted to run a marathon.
Hmm.
And then on the other hand, I also have the kind of general language learning good practice that I can share with people, so that they don't, I don't know, do stupid things like thinking immersion is the only way they could possibly do something, and then they don't do anything because it's not immersion.
Right.
Don't do that. That's stupid. So there you go.
Free tip.
Yeah, pro tip. That's kind of, I'm very bad at talking about my business. The Fluent Show started as the Creative Language Learning Podcast. I started it in 2013, I think. We're now on 207 episodes, I think, recorded. So it's still going
Yes.
strong.
Mm-hmm.
I changed it to the Fluent Show in 2018 because I realized every time I told people it's the Creative Language Learning Podcast, they kind of got bored halfway through the name. It's a very long name.
Mm.
So don't give your podcast a long name is my lesson that I learned from that. But it is still kind of about that. It is about creative approaches to learning languages
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah. I want you to tell us, those of us who are listening and may not listen to your show already,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like two or three people. Um, tell us where we can find you, and if anyone wants to reach out to you to work with you, let us know how we can do that.
Mm. My website is and has been for 8 years fluentlanguage.co.uk, and that would be the place where you can find my courses. You can take online classes with me in German, and I've got like a Welsh dabblers class,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got a French class, and obviously these really cool classes that make you better at studying any language that I think you should look at. But there's also a link to the podcast there, and you get the whole archive. And I have something embarrassing to admit. I recently got somebody to type up a database of all of my blog posts ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I have got 500 blog posts sitting on this
Wow.
website. So they're not optimized or SEO, but I think you should go, there's a search on there. Like, see what you can find. Because
Yeah.
they're here for you, and they're just available for everybody.
That's great. That's a great resource.
Yeah, who knew?
So I will take your information, of course, and add it to the show notes,
Mhm.
so that anyone can click and find you very quickly, and hopefully, anyone with an issue can work with you and sort out their language goals.
Yeah, do. It's worth working on it. It is really worth working on it. I think the amount of times that I have seen people make a lot of progress in an hour of just having that conversation with somebody who is there to bounce things off of you, or people who got one of my courses, and then 2 weeks later, you hear it from them and they say, "Oh, you finally made me realize that I was getting stuck on this,
Mm,
but because of what you've offered me, this kind of perspective or this kind of way of looking at it." Sometimes that's all you need. It's not
mhm.
my courses that do that uniquely, but they're good. You might as well look at them, I guess. It's just, it does pay. I think we underestimate how much it pays in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of intelligence to invest in your general skill at getting better at languages.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And while we're talking about investment and skills and language, and there's another thing that you have been working on, and it's coming up. I'm not going to tease it because I'm terrible at that, but Women in Language 2021.
Indeed. Oh my God. Yes, 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 yes. And this is something that I've been doing with two friends, Lindsay from Lindsay Does Languages, and Shannon, she's still Eurolinguist. That's always been her blog. So Shannon's from California, Lindsay is from Milton Keynes, UK, and I'm sort of from the UK
Mhm.
via some other places. And we run an online event together. It's called Women in Language, and it's a 4-day event. The idea is that it's designed to champion, celebrate, amplify the voices of women in language learning. So we got a lot of speakers. It's an online conference. We haven't got any men as speakers. Men can come though. So if you're listening to this, please come. And yeah, tickets are $29, and it's an absolute laugh. It's amazing. It's really, really a good time.
It is, and I attended my first one virtually last year, and I just couldn't believe just how much diversity and how different everybody's, the panels that you had
Mm,
the talks, people who gave talks, and I was just like, I personally just didn't know so many people had so many angles to learning their languages, embracing the languages they're learning, and the topics that I was blown away by just,
yeah.
the how many people, because I think for me, it's very easy for me to feel alone in this journey of learning a language and loving culture and embracing all these things. But I actually got to attend Women in Language, and I felt like, wow, it's not just me. It was like in The Wizard of Oz when, like, everything turns to color around Dorothy, and she's like, oh, it's
You are so sweet. Oh.
I thought I really, really enjoyed it. I thought everyone was brilliant. I just, because when I first heard of Women in Language was when I was listening to your podcast at my old job,
Mm.
and I was miserable and I hated it. And I was like, oh, I want to do this, Women in Language. But then, because I was listening to your back episodes, it had already passed. So I was like, oh, I got to wait to the next one. So then I
Mm.
got to attend it. I was looking forward to it, and then you had to postpone it, right? Last year?
Yes. So
Right.
what happened with Women in Language, the way Women in Language was actually conceived was, I think I had bouncing around in my head that I wanted to do something with sort of women and language and event kind of
Mhm.
thing, but it didn't have any shape. And maybe Shannon kind of felt the same way too. Like I think we could all feel it um, at the time. And I know, I saw so much media stuff, and every time it was media stuff about polyglots, especially here in the UK, it was always like basically the same three guys.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing one expert panel somewhere, and it was the same three guys.
Oh
And
god.
I love them, but it's the same three guys,
Mhm.
and a lady. And the lady was just there because she was the mother of a multilingual child.
Oh wow.
And I was just like, I just got so ranty about it. I couldn't get it out of my head. I got really ranty about it. So I kind of had it in the back of my head that this is like a thing that Kirsten gets ranty about or whatever, and that energy of mine goes to, seemingly. Like my 30s have been all about me becoming a feminist for sure. And regardless of that, like not as a kind of radical feminist event or anything like that. Lindsay just mentioned, I'm thinking about doing an event. Do you want to maybe do something? I was thinking maybe like a live event on International Women's Day, which is the 8th of March.
Okay.
That was the whole idea. It was Lindsay's idea. And I think between me and Shannon, like we both were like, yeah. Very quickly tried to pull together a bunch of people, and then realized we've got 4 days worth of event here, at least. And I mean,
Mhm.
this is the thing though about women in language learning, in language spaces. It's not quite the same anymore. Maybe we're making a tiny dent. I'm just going to flatter myself and think maybe. But like you think around, and especially at the time, like certainly you were like, oh, who are the great speakers that we can have? Oh, I don't know. Can we pull in together enough people? I think people sometimes think that it might be hard to get, like, in our case it's women, but it's so many other, like, is it really hard to get like so many experts who are women and whatever, queer women who are people of color? No, it's not. It
Mhm.
really isn't. And we don't really have to look very hard. So with Women in Language, it sort of also became about, so you can tell I'm passionate about this. It became about like this list and these people that we can champion, that we can highlight, who've got something to say, who are great, and just almost becoming that like resource. Like I never want Women in Language to be the only place where a woman thinks she can speak.
Mhm.
Like no, I want them all to go. And like you, by the way, listeners, I think you'll find that Elcheris is not telling you that she's a speaker this year, but I want you and everybody else to, yes, maybe speak at Women in Language, but I want you to speak at all the things, because the thing is about putting you out there. So this is just meant to be step one, really. Does this make
Mhm.
any sense? This is a bit rambly, but in answer to your question, that's why we started in March. And then
No.
last year it just wasn't happening in March, and then in the end we were like, oh, this was before the pandemic, let's just do it down the line, let's do it in this September.
Yeah.
And then this year we're not course correcting, we're like bringing it back to where it has always been. And
Right.
that's where we're doing one 6 months after the next one. That was long.
No, but that's good because obviously, this is something that, you've worked really hard to put this together and you're really passionate about that and that comes across. And
Mm,
it's really a wonderful event. And
yeah, I don't
I'm
think we expected the community to like. You can't engineer a community of people who are just awesome, right?
mhm,
But I think because it came from a place of joy and celebrating something and putting something together that is just slightly different.
mhm.
The community that collects around women in language is definitely its own kind of magic. And it
Yeah.
is really, it's a bunch of, not even a bunch, like now we have over 700 people. So it's like a big bunch, a tiny village of, it really is, isn't it? Of
Yeah.
just wonderful people
Mhm.
who are all, who just all get it. I don't know. It's amazing.
It really is. And I'm so happy to be speaking at Women in Language this year. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled actually. So I can't wait. And I want people to
Buy a ticket.
buy a ticket. So where can we buy our tickets, Kirsten?
So you can get your tickets at womeninlanguage.com. We start on the 4th of March this year and we finish on the 7th. So we've got 4 days of language madness. It's an online conference and you don't have to pay any extra. Tickets are $29. You don't have to pay any extra to get the replays. They're just included in the price. We also do a raffle, so you could win something worth, it's usually over 1,000. I think we'll manage it again. Yeah, we've got 3 amazing prizes. And what else? Oh, we also have People Bingo. And there is a Facebook group that runs over the events. So you can connect with the speakers and you can connect with other attendees. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. It's a busy event and well worth your time, I would
It's
say.
like a festival. I I'm gonna
Kind of.
add, yeah, I'll add those links again into the show notes so that and it's coming up soon, so don't hesitate if you don't have your ticket. Get it now. Don't think
Mm.
too much about it. Just do it. I wanted to ask you about Welsh. Like
Okay. Yeah.
how did Welsh become this language that you fell in love with?
Well, my first contact with Welsh is there's a Welsh TV channel in the UK called S4C. So every now and then I might have kind of, like when you're on the satellite channels and you're kind of flipping through, I might have hit the Welsh channel. So that was kind of my first awareness that Welsh exists and is not dead. Because when I first moved to the UK, I basically thought this is a dead language.
Mm.
Heck, it's not. Nowhere near. Like, no. More than I think 500,000 speakers now.
Yeah.
So that was my first contact. And then I remember one occasion where I think I said my first Welsh words when my husband and I went on holiday to Pembrokeshire, which is a really amazing part of the country, absolutely beautiful, and it's Wales. And then on the way there, we were listening to podcasts in the car, and we found this learning Welsh podcast, and just kind of both sat in the car and went, "Bore da, good morning, okay, pronoun da." And my husband even still knows those words, from the podcast. That was my first Welsh. And then I was sort of idly, for a while, I was kind of idly playing around with it.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then that was the year that we got married. So then I was busy getting married and all that stuff. And after we came back from honeymoon, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn Welsh now, and do a little bit more with it. And then I just did, for 5 years, I basically just did a little bit more and then did a little bit of this and then did a little bit of that. I took a course that I believe you can't take for free anymore, but is not not spendy and 1,000 times worth it. It's called Say Something in Welsh. It's
Mhm.
really good.
Mhm.
It's an audio course, but one that makes you answer back.
Huh.
And I did a lot of that. I did a free BBC course, and then kind of kept going out to Wales. And I just really have always really liked the fact that I think of it as, I live in the UK and we think of the UK as monolingual, maybe,
Mhm.
but it really isn't. I've got a podcast episode about that, by the way. And going to Wales, where all the signage is legally bilingual, basically all the public signage is
Yeah.
bilingual, is like unlocking a different level on like a video game. You know, where you like have the secret room where all the coins are. It's a little bit
Yes.
like that. Because
Huh.
I live in this country where I don't get the joy of languages. Like I love the UK, but it certainly isn't like living in Germany near the French border.
Mm-hmm.
But with Wales, it is. It's all there.
Yeah. How interesting.
And it's beautiful. And the language is amazing. The language is so lovely. And it's a rural area, and I'm from the countryside, and I think I kind of feel connected in a weird way. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It's for me.
Yeah.
I don't. I love doing Wolf and Wolf Gyda Cymraeg. I'm really into Welsh.
What does that mean?
That just means I'm really into Welsh.
Oh my gosh. Shall we move on to German?
Whatever you like. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I would love to know, what are some things about the German culture and the language that you find unique? And is there something from Germany that you cannot possibly explain to someone who has never visited or lived in Germany?
Oh, this is really tricky, Elle, because I've been away from Germany for that long. So I can tell you what I miss the most about Germany, and
Sure.
I can tell you things that I notice now that are like super German. But I have to preface by saying I live more as a British person than a German person
Mm,
these days, mind you. Okay, so some things about German culture. Germany is diverse, and I don't mean ethnically diverse. Not that it isn't, but what I mean is Germany is made up of. It's got 16 states, and I think each state has got its own like little soul, and this, I guess it's a bit like USA. Like we're federal. We've got that
mhm,
in common. Um, and that's something that I think people don't necessarily realize about Germany. I think people who think about Germany often have an image in their head that is Bavaria, where it's like the Alps and the leather trousers and the beer. And we love our traditions. We celebrate our traditions, but Hamburg is also Germany.
mhm.
Berlin is also Germany. Where I'm from, which is a winemaking region, like way better than the ones in France. It's also Germany. Um, I cannot guarantee you that. But you know, like one of the world's one of the world's most renowned Riesling wine growing areas is Germany, and Germany
Ooh.
just has so much variety, and it's
Mhm,
got so much going for it. And something that really surprised me with English friends, British friends, is that they tell me they thought Germany would be really industrial,
mm,
but it isn't at all. And it doesn't have like this one center like the UK has got London, and it is so London centric. But in Germany, I don't think it's like that. I
mhm.
think Germany has lots of centers, and it must come out of the history of having been all these different like dukedoms and all that kind of thing for
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of years. And I love that about Germany. I love the variety. I love that we have so many dialects that are really very strong,
Mhm.
to the point where like when I teach people German, I say the German that I'm teaching you, it's this kind of like we call it Hochdeutsch, High German, right? It's like
Hochdeutsch.
yeah, like Mandarin or something. It's you don't expect everybody to speak like this to each other,
Mm.
but it's like news German.
Ah,
But I
okay.
didn't speak that until I went to school. It's like the kind of variant of school. I'm not expressing this very well, but the the fact that our regional dialects are so strong, it's not like it's stronger than British and American English differences, I would say.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I love that about it. And I love that Germans are so I'm I mean, you know, this is no country is ever perfect, and no way of doing things is perfect. But I think Germany has done an okay job looking at a very difficult past and being like I'm proud of post-war Germany.
Hmm.
Um and the kind of the history there. Not that it's the best country ever or anything, but it's interesting. And there's been some really hard things, and you can tell with the way Germany is now, politically, socially, you can tell that that's based on everything that came before it and trying to learn some sort of lesson out of it.
Yeah.
So I like that, and
Hmm.
I like that they like reasonable kind of discussing debate open, um is a thing that happens a lot, like on German TV and stuff. You always get these talking head shows where there's five people and they all disagree with each other, and they get given a space to disagree. So something that Germany gave me, being German, gives me, from home, is the knowledge that it's okay to disagree with somebody.
Yeah.
um and I think that's more than in the UK, in a way.
It's definitely more than here in the US for sure. So you whispered that you come
Of
from a wine region that is superior to France.
course we
Um,
are.
what makes it superior? What is wine culture in Germany like? And I ask you this specifically because I get the impression as an American, and I think a lot of Americans do, as we do our, Oktoberfest celebrations in every single, from a diner to a, four-star restaurant, in October, which is,
Hmm.
very literal. Um, I think that we have this impression, this, like you said, this Bavarian culture being the dominant, what we see in America. So we always think of the beer, the beer steins, and
Mm.
this beer culture. But even as I was getting into drinking wine years ago, I admit I was shocked to know that Germany produces these amazing wines. And I would love to know, like, and I know you haven't lived in Germany for a while, but if you do know, what is the wine culture like in Germany?
Mm.
How do people relate to their wine regions, and what kind of culture is there around surrounding wine in Germany?
I think most of the wine that gets produced in Germany is also drunk in Germany.
Mm,
And so it's very common for a restaurant in an area where wine is grown to offer you something regional, something local.
mhm,
And it's not, we don't have too many like really enormous companies. Like in the USA, what I've experienced when I've gone to see vineyards is they're so slick and business and so like on it. Whereas what
mm,
I've grown up in is like, where's the tractor? Oh no, someone's ringing the doorbell. Okay, let's sit down with these guests and, like have a chat with them. And it's all family based. Like I've grown up in a family business.
yeah.
So wine for me is, it's what my family does, And in the USA, like people come into winemaking not to, not because they've grown up in a vineyard or anything like that, but because it's a cool, interesting business to have,
Yeah.
and then they don't actually it's a much bigger operation. So that's definitely something. I think in Germany you don't have as many of that. So the wines that you get, obviously in a supermarket, yeah, but the wines that you get will be more likely to come from like a smaller producer.
Mm,
And if they come from a bigger one, then it's often a syndicate where a lot of the producers kind of give part of their harvest, like sell part of their harvest to the bigger syndicate, and then they produce something. And then that's how they get the amounts that they need in order to get into wholesale.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's a different kind of uh, production sort of region. The
Mhm.
climate is also like, we're not superior to France. I'm joking. I'm very
I
much
know.
joking.
I know.
And it just also, there just happens to be a line there. But one of the things I did at undergrad, when I was first at university in England, I did my undergrad dissertation on German wine versus French wine
Mm.
on the British market because I was so baffled when I moved to England that nobody understood that German wine is like can be good.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to know what and but everybody thought French wine was this like super fancy thing, and it is a true fact in America, not as much as in the UK, that if your wine happens to be the same thing but it's from France, say if you have an Alsace and you have a Moselle wine, they're not that crazy different.
Mm-hmm.
If it's French, you can charge 3, 4, £5 more at least,
Oh, for sure.
just because it's French,
Yeah.
because that's what the customers, that's how the wines are seen. So I kind of looked into that and looked at it from the external point of view, and it was just completely, it was incredible. It was really educational to me, and yeah, really taught me a lot about how German wine is seen around the world. But you're asking
Yeah.
about in Germany. I think Germans really like to sit with a drink. That's
Mm-hmm.
something cultural, I would say. Like they'll get a drink and then you're just going to like sit and hang for hours and
Mm.
hours and hours. Like they take their time. If you, once you're hanging out, you're hanging. You're like in this. You don't have to necessarily, I don't know, plan like to leave it. It's not like, is it in England? It's always like, is it polite? Like we should really leave because we're really getting on, and this evening's getting on, and the host doesn't want us this long. And in Germany, I've never seen that
Mm-hmm.
to the same extent. It's more like, well, we're still here. Bring another glass. Maybe that's just where I'm from, though, because I'm from the countryside. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that in general about parts of Europe where you're with friends, you're enjoying yourself, you're having a good time and no one's rushing you, you know? No one's giving you the boot. It's just like, you know, here we don't have that culture. Here it's like especially when you're at a restaurant, they bring you the check before you even ask for it sometimes because they need the table, you
Yeah,
know?
they move
So,
you on, don't they? That's
yeah,
not. Yeah, no, I think that's rude.
it's I hate it. It's the word. I mean, you don't know any different if you haven't left the country and experienced, these type of um evenings like what you're discussing, but if once you've had that experience, you don't want to go back to just being forced out of a dining experience with someone you haven't seen in 10 years and then they're, pushing you out on the sidewalk.
Yeah,
Um
it both has its good sides because if you're the host and you're really, really tired, it can be really difficult to get rid of people.
that's true too. So let me paint a picture. Okay, let me just preface this by saying I tried learning German last year and I failed spectacularly. I'm okay with it. It just wasn't my time. I wasn't ready. Um, and I'll come back to it at some point.
Well, you did learn some German then, so I think you succeeded in learning German. You don't have to learn all of German at once.
If I feel like I'm okay with pronunciation. I'm terrible at the grammar and vocabulary, but I'm getting there, and you know, it will happen. I just want to know enough so that when I do come to Germany someday and go visit Germany someday, I can fake it and get around a little bit. But I wanted to ask you if when that day does come and I am in Germany and
Mhm.
I'm having some wine, either in a restaurant or with a winemaker, what are some German uh, terms that you think I should know if I'm trying to describe what kind of wine that I'd like to drink?
Oh, that's good. Well, the most important words that you probably have to know are trocken, which is
Talking?
dry, trocken.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you can still say halbtrocken. They change the designations every now and then, like the law, they come out with different words. But yeah, halbtrocken, like half dry, basically,
Okay.
right? So halb and half,
Halbtrocken.
essentially same word.
Okay.
So you've got trocken.
Trocken.
What's the other one?
Halbtrocken.
Yeah, halbtrocken. Excellent. So you got trocken and halbtrocken. And I have found, and I think you should. if you think you know that you like a dry wine or a sweet wine or whatever, and you haven't drunk a lot of wine from Germany before, I would just really let them kind of, like, if they want you to try like a dry and a semi-dry, just try them all, because they're different. Like the different palates are different in different countries.
Yeah.
Like when a British person says they want something dry and I give them something that my mom calls really, really dry, then they're telling me it's too dry often.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, yeah, I think that's just because some markets, you just get all these international wines. So when they're produced in Germany, they might not be quite what you're used to from a like a South African wine or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is boring. I shall move on. So you've got trocken and halbtrocken. And then you can either say süß.
Zeus?
Yeah, for sweet.
Oh.
But if you want to sound ever so slightly more like legit, then you say lieblich, which is a lovely word.
Lieblich.
Yeah, you are good.
So
Lieblich.
is that related to Liebling?
Lieblich just kind of sort of means lovely, but we only ever use it to describe a wine that is sweet.
Okay. Because
Lieblich.
I learned the word Liebling once.
Mm-hmm.
Means
Yeah,
like
like darling.
sweetheart, darling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Liebe is the German word for love.
Liebe, ich liebe dich.
Yeah.
Wow, I know more German than I thought I did.
That's how it works.
What are some German wine terms that you can think of that may be tricky to pronounce for English speakers?
Oh, like Trockenbeerenauslese?
Oh my God.
It's not difficult to pronounce, it's just long. Okay, so the German, and I think this is a good thing to know about German wines if we're talking about German wines. So we've got trocken, halbtrocken, and lieblich.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell I teach by the way I'm repeating these at you until you remember them. But so, and then you have this podcast interview is hilarious. You've got like we've got this it's called the predicate, so it's like the way that the German system kind of comes up with this sort of hierarchy of quality. And it's based on how not sugary, like how dense, how sweet essentially the grape is when you're harvesting it. Right, so it's kind of based on how much water is there compared to how much good stuff in the grape, how much fruit nectar kind of thing. You can measure that, and then you have to kind of report that as you have to kind of track that, and it kind of goes into, oh, this is what this wine will become. So taking that later, then you want to look at a few things. You want to look at the word Prädikat on the label, but it doesn't have to be there. So the real important words that you need to look for, you want to look for something that ends in lese, L-E-S-E, lese, which means like selection or harvest. So that's like the harvest. Lese.
Lese.
It's the same word as lesen, to read, but also lesen, like to pick it out or something like that.
Okay.
So it's like Weinlese or Traubenlese is harvesting the grapes. And then, so you want to look for a word that ends in lese. You don't want to ever buy something that's called Landwein unless they're charging you $5 for it, but it's probably going to be bad. So you're looking for something that says Qualitätswein, because that's quality. That's relatively easy. It'll look like the word quality. And then you want something with lese at the end. That's the good stuff, right? So the system goes Kabinett, pretty decent, and then Spätlese, nice. And that can be dry or trocken or lieblich. It doesn't matter. It's just kind of about the oomph, I guess, of the wine. And I'm a white wine girl, so I'm really talking white wine here. White wine's better, yeah. So you got the Spätlese. And then the next one up from the Spätlese, that's a late harvest. So imagine the fruit has hung a little bit longer, it's a little bit ripe. Right? So it's a late harvest. And then you get Auslese, which is like they picked out, right? So it's like a selection.
Auslese.
Yeah. And then the next is Beerenauslese. So then it's like a selection of the berries. And I'm talking very much like Mosel production methods, but imagine you're going into the vineyard and you're looking for the overripe ones. You're no longer just like, your machine is like trucking down the fields, and just you harvest everything. You literally have people going through there and looking around going, oh no, there's not ripe yet, we're not taking those are starting to rot, they're the good stuff.
Okay.
So and obviously more expensive, lower yield, more effort to make, and all that good stuff. So then you've got but I'm kind of going through it because the word builds up as well. So you got the Auslese, the selection, then you've got the Beerenauslese, the berry selection, and then the word trocken, which means dry. So then they're the berries, I guess, that are like, maybe they're starting to go a bit like raisin. I think that's what it comes from. So then you've got the dry berry selection, Trockenbeerenauslese.
Beerenauslese.
And I think you could probably impress someone with that.
Oh my gosh. Getting through a German word is fun. It's kind of like, it's intimidating, but it's so like, oh man, I did it.
It is. And the word is just like, the word does such a jolly thing. Welsh does this too. Maybe that's why I like, it's another point for Welsh. We do, I think they call it agglutinative. We just stick all the words together to make bigger words.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, oh, the so-and-so off the so-and-so with the so-and-so. We just whack them all together.
Right.
And that's fun.
It is so much fun.
You gotta love German to learn German.
I really, really enjoy it. And I love pronouncing it too. So I'll get there.
No rush.
Yeah, no rush. I got time. So since you are from a family of winemakers, is your wine available, like, is your family's wine available outside of the vineyard? Like, where can it be purchased?
Like online.
Okay.
So you can order from us online, and if you happen to be a listener in the European Union, then do that, and it'll be really easy to ship it. We've recently had some issues with shipping to the UK because of Brexit. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real. I've had to phone a customer on my mum's behalf because my English is better, and then chat to this customer and go, yeah, sorry, we're gonna have to cancel your order because we don't know how to get it to you. Would you like to pay 8 times the postage amount that it was last year?
Holy macaroni.
I know. It'll get better. Well, it'll get figured out, but right now it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
So if you're in the USA, you can't directly order from us because, again, shipping, and it's not possible. You can go to your trusted local wine shop or order online and look for a wine company called Richter. That's Richter. And they are a bigger business than ours. So they've got like a ship abroad agent, but they're from across the road. And I once hosted this German retreat, like back in the non-COVID days. I used to host retreat for German learners where we just kind of hang out. And I did one where we had a day where we just hung out with my family, basically.
That's so cool.
Yes. Like my parents took us on a tour around the vineyards, and she said she was drinking wine from this bottle, and she showed me the bottle when she booked, and she was like, I think she said, do you know where this is? Or look, this is like the wine that I know. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's literally across the road from where I grew up. Like, that's my neighbor. And so you can buy my sort of neighbor's wine in America, in New York. I know, because she's from New York.
Cool.
And it was very exciting for her to be in front of the actual house from the wine label.
It really is a wonderful thing, I think, especially for us in the US, to like have that, like, oh, this is the same wine that I drink, every weekend. And then like you're actually there. It's thrilling.
It is so cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah. And and I mean, it's the Romans who brought wine to us as well. So we got a lot of kind of really, really old heritage as well, which makes it, again, kind of different. I don't know.
And tell us the website.
Okay. Yes. If you happen to, just have a look, just get to wave to my mom or something. It's Weingut, so WEINGUT -Hammers HAMMES.de.
Perfect.
I think it's all in German at the moment, but the shop is in English also.
Okay. Well, at the very least, if you can't get your wine to the UK or to the US or outside of the EU, you can practice your
Just look,
German.
yeah, just look for Moselle wines. Like wines from the Moselle have a certain character and stuff. So I think Moselle, if you like white wine, Moselle Riesling is a wine worth checking out.
I
Definitely.
I am a red wine drinker. However,
Aha, she
but
is.
I will tell you, if I drink a white wine, it has to be a German Riesling
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
Gewürz. Is that Austrian though? Or
No, Gewürztraminer is it's mostly the Alsace. It's
oh,
like
okay.
we do make it in the German kind of side, but it's basically same, not very different region across the border.
Yeah, it's what's the word? I don't find that here very often, and I think just maybe it's a pronunciation thing. But a German Riesling, I cannot resist. It's delicious, and um, now I wish I had some, but maybe later.
I
It's
know, I know. Well, we can hang out. We can go and get some
yeah. This
after
is
recording. Which is like
after
after dark. It'll just be Elle and me drinking wine. It'd be great.
yeah. Um, Kirsten, this has been such a fun conversation to have with you, and thank you so much for your insight, for the laughs, for your expertise, for your encouragement, for everything. I'm so happy to have had you as a guest on my show. I'm honored. I'm truly honored that you had the time to talk to me today and share your story with all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really fun to come and just kind of chat about, yes, all the different bits that kind of add up and like make up a life and a person, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I like to end each episode with the same question. So I like to bookend with the same beginning and end. Um, do you have any jokes, swear words, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice to share? And I know that, I initially said in German, but you've studied so much. And if you have any, I'll open it up, any language that you can share any of those things in, that would be great.
You know what's one of my favorite sayings, which I think is because it's so true for me. It's so true for me, and it's from Latin class.
Oh,
Yeah, I know, and I'm digging deep here, but which is maybe you know it. Si tacuissus philosophus mansisis.
I do not know that.
Okay, so si tacuissus. Had you had you kept quiet? So
Mhm.
sorry, I learned this in when I learned Latin from German. So it's hättest du geschwiegen, wärst du Philosoph geblieben in German, and essentially it means had you kept quiet, you'd have remained a philosopher,
Oh.
right? So it's kind of because I'm so extroverted and I just come out with stuff. So often I'm like, oh man, I wish I hadn't said anything because then people would think I'm clever. So it's one of my favorite sayings for that reason. Sitacuisis, philosophus mansisis. Clearly, people have had that problem for thousands of years.
I'm gonna tell you, in all the years of Latin that I took in high school, we never spoke Latin. We only translated Latin.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like cool for me to hear somebody speaking Latin, like, and like so rapidly. I'm like, wait, wait, wait. But now you
Is
have you have to teach it to me now.
all the saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just 4 words.
Okay.
So si,
See?
right? Like if. I think the same way that it's in Spanish or something. But anyway, so si, and then it's tacuisis.
See tacoisis.
Yes. And if you think of tak, right, that's the same root of word, I think, as when you in English you call somebody taciturn.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, language is amazing. So tacuisis, had you kept quiet, philosophus,
Philosophus.
yeah, like a philosopher, man. And then mansisis.
Mansisis?
Man sisses, yeah.
Man
So that
sisses.
isses is the subjunctive ending, I think.
Oh, subjunctive.
Yeah, our good old friend.
Uh.
So had you kept your calm, or had you kept your quiet, kept your mouth shut, you would have remained a philosopher.
That's brilliant. I love
I
it.
love it. Yeah. So that's I'm reaching back to the ancient languages for my wisdom here. That's good. I feel accomplished.
I think you're the first one so far who's reached back into antiquity for this question. So I greatly appreciate it. I love Latin. I also need to find a Latin speaker for this show. And brush up on Latin. It's been like 20 years, but
Me too. Me
I love
too.
it. And and okay. So again, Kirsten, thank you so much for teaching me that Latin phrase and for sharing your time in general. I really enjoy talking to you. And before I let you go, um, don't think about this too hard, but in this situation, what would be the best way to say goodbye?
Oh, can we say goodbye like we do on the Fluent Show? That'd be fun.
Sure.
Okay. So, but we'll do it with you as the host. So you have to say, it's goodbye from me, goodbye. And then you say, and it's goodbye from Kristen Cable. And then I say goodbye in a different language.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say it's goodbye from me, goodbye, and it's goodbye from Kristen Cable.
Cheers.
That was fun. I'll talk to you soon, Kirsten.
Bye. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.